Hello and welcome to the ILC Daily Show. I'm Rosalind Yarde. We're coming to you live from Geneva and Lima today via our virtual Daily Show studio. And I'm pleased to say that I'm joined today by our co-host Luis Cordova, who's in Lima. And Luis is the ILO's Senior Regional Communication Officer for Latin America and the Caribbean. Good morning, Luis. It is morning where you are, isn't it?
Buenos dias, Rosalind. In fact, it is 9:30. Good to join you all for the ILC Daily Show. We are broadcasting now live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. An interpretation of the show is available both in French and Spanish.
Thanks, Luis. Yes, it's good to see so many joining us, and we want to hear from all of you watching. So please pose your questions to us during the program, and our experts today will be talking about health and safety in the workplace. It's an issue that affects all of us, and today we'll be focusing in particular on the return to work, but also on mental health, which has been a big issue during this pandemic. So if you do have questions, please post them on Twitter using hashtag ILC Daily Show, or if you're watching us on Facebook, post your questions in the comments section.
Yes, please, do post your questions. In a short while, we will be hearing from Joaquin Pintado Nunes, Chief of the ILO Labor Administration and Occupational Safety and Health Branch. We will also be joined in a little later by Manal, Azzi, Senior ILO Expert on Safety and Health at Work. You can post your questions for both of them.
Yeah, thanks, Luis. But before we get to that, let's find out what's been happening at the ILC today. And as we know, the plenary sittings, they've continued. And just to give you an update, in case you don't know, the plenary is the public forum of the ILC where governments, workers and employers' representatives discuss key world of work issues. Now today, we heard statements from 36 ILC delegates on the Director General's report to the conference. And the conference committees also continued their work, including discussions on social protection and the application of ILO standards.
Thanks, Rosalind. The ILC is convening the world of work at a decisive moment during the pandemic. Vaccine rollout in some countries is allowing for the lifting of restrictions and a return to workplaces. Workplace safety and health is central to the pandemic response, and as societies continue to protect people against the threat of COVID-19.
Yes, and certainly work is where the majority of us spend a big proportion of our daily lives, which is why it's so important that we have resilient and strong health and safety systems in the workplace, not only to protect workers and enterprises for the crises of today, but also to prepare us for the future crises as well. So let's watch a short video which shows the actions that need to be taken to build strong safety and health systems at work.
To help us explore the safety and health at work issue in more depth, we are pleased to be joined by Joaquin Pintado Nunes, Chief of the ILO Labor Administration and Occupational Safety and Health Branch. He will be taking some of our questions, but please do post your own questions in Twitter using the hashtag ILC Daily Show or in the comment section under the player on Facebook page of the ILO. Welcome, Joaquin. My first question is, has the pandemic exposed weaknesses in occupational safety and health systems in different countries all over the world?
Thank you, Luis. That is a quite interesting question. I would say that not only COVID-19, but crises that we have seen over the past 10 years, and we all remember the tragic events in the port of Beirut, for instance, last year, SARS, the Fukushima accident, Rana Plaza, the Dam Valley disaster in Brazil, and so many other events and public health threats that have really put in evidence that we need to do more on occupational safety and health. So I'd rather say that the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted deficits that were already visible. The pandemic also made it clear that safety and health at work is an issue for all of us, as we all may get affected by any occupational hazard, independently of what we do and where we work, either physically or mentally. So I would also say that we have seen very good progress in many member states, and quite recently a growing number of ratification of our OSH conventions, notably Convention 155, 187, and 161, but there is still a very long road ahead of us. We cannot forget that every single day, more than 7,500 people die because of work. So it's important to stress that occupational safety and health systems are fundamental for decent work. And we also have to consider that a good national occupational safety and health system is the sum of many interconnected elements. And this is not always well acknowledged. And when one of these elements fails, it's the whole system that is concerned. So with the pandemic, we have seen that in some cases, some of these elements may not be present, or they may need to be strengthened. For instance, we have seen that in some of our member states, we don't have updated knowledge on the most relevant occupational hazards. Sometimes institutions responsible for occupational safety and health may not have the capacity to respond to crisis situations. Also, quite often, we see that responses by public authorities are not sufficiently coordinated, namely between health and labor. The involvement of social partners in policy making may also require to be strengthened in many cases. We see that legal frameworks in many countries still do not cover all workplaces and all workers. And furthermore, we also see that support mechanisms for employers and for workers, and as well labor enforcement systems, may be weak, both in terms of available resources, but also expertise. In some countries, for instance, we see that we don't even have enough services or skilled labor to work on prevention. We know, for example, that even in industrialized countries, occupational health services do not cover more than 50% of the workplaces. This is frightening. So for all of these reasons, this is why this year's World Day Campaign for Safety and Health at Work called upon our member states to invest in sound and resilient OSH systems to be able to cope and face crises like the one we are living with COVID-19. And I hope the message will be successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Joachim. Well, the ILO and WHO have produced joint guidelines on good safety and health practice in the workplace. Can you tell us a bit more about these and the importance of the two agencies working together?
Well, Rosalind, cooperation with WHO is long-standing. We have been working for many years in close collaboration, and this is because there is we have obvious synergies between health and occupational safety and health. So in addition to the importance of sharing our expertise, it's also very important to convey consistent messages to our constituencies, labor and health. And it's also very important to involve the institutions of work and notably social partners on the debate around public health policies. In relation to COVID-19, we know that workplaces are very important clusters to prevent transmission of the virus. We cannot control contagion if we do not address the problems we may have at workplace level. So this recent guidance from the ILO and WHO, which was released on the 19th of May and is available online on our website and also WHO's website, gives practical advice to national and local authorities, employers and workers' organizations on how to implement measures, policies and measures to address the many problems that COVID-19 has brought in relation to safety and health at work. The brief looks into features of workplaces and occupations that may place workers at a higher risk. For example, indoor workplaces with a large concentration of workers, spaces with no ventilation or poor ventilation, occupations that require close or direct contact between workers and co-workers and clients, shared accommodations, shared transportation. So for all of these situations, and I'd say for any other workplace, the guidance provides some information on what are the most effective workplace measures to avoid, prevent transmission of the virus, but also to address other occupational hazards that may happen because or put in evidence because of COVID-19. These include, of course, what we all know in terms of using telework, limiting social interaction, reducing workplace density, keeping physical distance, the use of personal protective equipment. But it's very important to stress that all of this is to be used according to what we call the hierarchy of controls. And the hierarchy of controls gives priority always to changes in workplaces, in work processes, in work organization, before looking into the use of personal protective equipment, as this may be required, but always should complement other types of measures. Very important also, the brief calls the attention to the need to consult with and involve workers' representatives to address occupational safety and health, both at national, sectorial, and workplace level. In terms of national policy, the recommendations provided by the brief call upon governments, of course in consultation with social partners, to adopt a human-centered approach, giving priority to life and to health through the coordinated action of ministries responsible for labor and for health, and to apply preventive policies to all workers and to all workplaces, and to address in particular the needs of the smaller companies and the informal economy.
Thanks, Joaquim. It seems we are now getting questions from our listeners through our social media channels. I have a question from Marcelo from Brazil here. He is saying that telework is now a new normal for many people. What are the safety and health risks for those workers?
Well, that's a question that applies to many of us. So I would say that with this form of work, we have in particular to address mental health issues, and also all that relates to ergonomics, balance between professional, family, and private life, privacy, and very much also what we have to consider there is that our home is not a workplace. And again, especially when it comes to the responsibility of employers to ensure that we have a safe and healthy work environment, teleworking comes with very particular challenges because our domiciles are not under the direct control of employers. And in addition to that, as workers, and even if we live in our homes, we may not be aware of all the different risks that we are exposed to when working from our home. We may not have the adequate conditions in terms of not using, for instance, an ergonomic chair. We may have to share our house with other members of the family that are also working. We may have to take care of children or elderly people. We may not even have the best conditions in terms of lighting. So all of this would need to be considered as particular risks that will be common to most of us when teleworking.
Thank you, Joaquim. Now we've beginning to get some questions in from the audience. So here's one from Ravindran from Malaysia, and she asks, does the ILO plan to review its international standards concerning healthcare workers? Could you answer that, Joaquim? Maybe you could just keep a little bit brief, because I see the time is running out on us.
Yes, so according to recent decisions, what I would say is that the ILO will be enriching its normative framework, addressing in particular all that relates to biological hazard, and especially when we think, of course, of COVID-19, well, the new coronavirus. This will be a standard that will complete the very rich normative framework of the ILO when it comes to occupational safety and health.
Thanks, Joachim. Really interesting. Now, before we go to our next interview, we want to bring you the third in our series of videos that we're showing each day. And each of these videos are featuring managers of projects that we're running in the field. And through these videos, really, we're given a really unique perspective of the ILO's work on the ground, because this is where we put the decent work agenda into action and really help our beneficiaries in the world of work. Now, today's video comes from Rodrigo Mogrovejo in Mexico, who's going to be talking about the Vision Zero Fund project, which he runs. And this project helps improve occupational safety and health in the coffee supply chain in Mexico, Colombia, and Honduras.
My name is Rodrigo Mogrovejo. I'm the ILO Chief Technical Advisor for the Vision Zero Fund project on OSH in the global coffee supply chain. The project focuses on 3 countries in Latin America: Colombia, Honduras, and Mexico, the 3rd, 4th, and 10th coffee producers in the world. Its objective is to reduce occupational diseases and accidents in the global chains and promote decent work. Coffee is the 2nd most consumed beverage in the world after water. This situation causes the chains to have various actors and important impact on employment. In the 3 countries that I work, around 3 million people. Still, the working conditions of the most vulnerable workers, which are the vast majority, are deficient, especially in terms of safety and health at work. Now, I am on a small coffee farm in Mexico, with training activities with working women and coffee producers. This activity is one of many that arises from the tripartite dialogue process. The project helped generate evidence on the drivers and constraints of OSH in the global coffee chains through different studies by country and the development of innovative instruments. Finally, the COVID-19 pandemic allowed the project to position OSH as a priority, and the answer was through protocols and virtual training courses, focusing on small producers.
Well, it's great to hear directly from colleagues in the field who have been working to keep work projects running in very difficult times. Thank you, Rodrigo, for your video and this Vision Zero Fund project covering Mexico, Colombia, and Honduras. It is delivered in partnership with the European Commission. We will bring you another video tomorrow.
Thank you, Luis. Now, in addition to the broad safety and health issues we've been talking about during the programme, one issue which is really important that has affected so many of us is the issue of mental health. And as we saw on the video earlier, this includes the health workers and others in the front line of the pandemic, but it also includes many of us, the many millions of us who've been teleworking, which has really led to unintended consequences. And we've been hearing reports of people who are talking about isolation, anxiety, and depression increasing. So to discuss this further, I'm pleased to say that we have in the studio our expert, Manal Azzi, ILO's Senior Technical Expert on Safety and Health at Work. Welcome, Manal. Now, the pandemic has had a major impact on mental as well as physical health. So what are those issues that you've seen in your work during this last year or so?
Thanks, Rosalind. As we saw, it's really an important issue. We've even started receiving questions on the problems. We're living through new times. The pandemic has affected us all, as we heard, but we say that mental health and the impact it's had on everyone's mental health is really the second pandemic that we're living through. We're already seeing statistics and research globally from different regions that actually describe how people are suffering due to various reasons. Of course, some of us, have changed our work arrangements. We've moved into teleworking. Others have lost their jobs completely, and it's affected differently women and men for various reasons. What we're seeing from the world of work perspective, especially if we zoom in on the increase in teleworking. So this is not a teleworking that was planned. It was mandatory. It was immediate. People were not ready. Our homes were not ready. The various responsibilities that we juggle are still there as we were continuing to deliver on our various tasks. So what we see that impacts our mental health is really the environment we work in. So it's not just about mental issues that impact mental health, it's the physical environment we work in. Do we have the right tools to deliver? Do we have the right tools to answer to the different requests that we have? And then it's about the workplace, workspace, and the working time. So working time became a huge issue. Are we able to disconnect, and are we able to continue to take responsibility for the elderly, for other work-life balance questions and concerns that we have to manage at home? And also, is management, have they moved up to the level that's needed to understand what workers need during this phase, the kind of leadership that's needed, the transformative kind of leadership that you need during this new working arrangement is also essential. So we're seeing a huge impact globally on the world of work, not just by teleworking, but globally on people's identities and how they relate to work and how they may find themselves isolated. And moving back to work is also going to be trying for many people as well.
Thanks, Manal. We have also seen that some of the measures taken to reduce risk and prevent infection resulted in unintended consequences on mental health at workplaces. What lessons have been learned? What can we do in the future to work better?
Obviously, we've learned a lot, and we're still learning. We still haven't even touched the surface of what the impact really is of this global pandemic that is still ongoing, and various countries are answering at different stages of the pandemic itself. So there are different interventions that have worked. We've seen different companies and enterprises that have been listening to their workers and understanding the flexibility that's required in these changing times, have been able to win better productivity from these same workers. So enforcing the same traditional structures and measures does not work in these times. And once you lose a worker due to mental health concerns, the way back is really difficult. So this is not just because we want people to be happy or not. We're seeing the complaints coming from human resources globally, where this is a cost. It's a cost but in terms of sick leave, in terms of absenteeism and presentism, and different people trying to deliver, but actually we've lost a big bulk of our assets and our intelligence in these big enterprises. So it's a real concern. We've had multinationals contacting us asking, what is the solution? What can we do? I'd like to just recall that we have international labor standards that already provide for the protection of mental health of workers through changes such as these ones, and the rights should be preserved for the long term. And we have a number of codes of practice and guidelines in this area, and new research is being prepared and delivered so we can better understand the flexibilities needed moving forward. Obviously, we have a number of these publications, resources available for everyone online, and we're continuing to learn and work in partnership with other UN agencies and other global institutions to find solutions to the new crises that we are facing affecting our mental and physical health today.
Thanks, Manal. Some really important points there. So how can workplaces make it easier for staff to talk about and address these issues?
That's an important question. Thanks, Rosalind. It's really the stigma that's around people voicing their concerns and voicing their weaknesses. So we're meant to always show a face that, we're capable, we're going to do this even if we can't, and then you have a nervous breakdown and you've completely lost your worker. The idea is to be able to provide solutions. We have companies that actually force their workers to have a break at least 1 to 2 hours. They even enroll them in different physical activity gyms and places, encourage them with different vouchers that would relieve their responsibilities in terms of babysitting and others, and provide that really continuous circumstantial flexibility. So you need to listen to your worker. Everybody's different. While we've saved on commuting by teleworking, where we've lost other aspects that we used to enjoy in our social life in workplaces. So we need to understand, what kind of hybrid situation or what kind of mixed solution can be found. And it's not one size fits all. We need to understand the different circumstances of different people, because here, this is where the life, your personal life and your work life is fully blurred. You're using your home as your workplace. That's even if you have a job. So that's very difficult for people to express these challenges, because they're scared to be punished or treated differently in terms of work, and working on that changing culture, changing management culture, to understand that you're winning by listening to your worker in the long term, rather than forcing a situation that's going to be negative on them today, and then you lose that worker for the long term.
Yeah, thanks, Manal. As you can see, mental health at work is usually an issue of concern for many people in times of COVID. We are getting some questions from the audience. I'm going to read one that came from Parul in India. The question is, what is the ILO doing to protect mental health at the workplace and protect workers from harassment?
Yes, thank you for that excellent question. First of all, we need to also remember that we've been working on the issue of managing these psychosocial risks and preventing harassment and preventing violence and harassment in the world of work for years now. So this is not a new issue. It's just been exacerbated by the changing work arrangements and the crisis we're facing today. In a sense, it's important that we highlight it, but what's more essential, that we make changes and to our policies and to our legislation that are going to really be effective down the road, and not just be a momentary wake-up call today. Today, people are suffering. They're in different hospitals. They're being taken care of for these mental health impacts. You walk around, you talk to any medical doctor, most complaints coming in are psychiatric. Also from the different wards in hospitals, this is what people are complaining of. And the ILO has been pioneering by preparing a global convention for the prevention of violence and harassment in the world of work, that we would urge governments around the world to ratify and implement its provisions and principles today. We've developed a number of codes of practice specifically on managing psychosocial risks, integrating this in your occupational safety and health management system at the workplace level, but also at the national level, and increasing expertise about this issue, and decreasing and breaking down the stigma and discrimination around people voicing their situations around mental health and violence and harassment. So the ILO is doing a lot through its normative framework, but also through its trainings and different guidance and research, that we accompany different institutes around the world that are even, global experts in the area of mental health. We are currently sitting on a number of international boards trying to view and see, what further the world needs in terms of new tools to address these struggles that the world's facing today.
Thank you, Manal. And we've just about got time for one more question. And this one has come through to us from Kassif from Saudi Arabia. And Kassif asks, how is the ILO playing a role across all industries to prevent new COVID-19 cases? Is there a guideline on this issue, Kassif asks?
to prevent new cases of transmission in the world of work. So the ILO, in most of its publications and new policy briefs and guidance and fact sheets, obviously, is trying to encourage governments to follow this hierarchy of risk assessment. And so the general guidance is to eliminate exposure to the extent possible, and where possible, people are being requested to continue to work from home. And then when they do return to work, there are certain measures that were mentioned by the branch chief Joachim on how we need to gradually implement these measures to prevent contagion. Some of them, there needs to be an investment, there needs to be a bigger role in occupational safety and health services in these different workplaces, in order to make sure that we can control, measure, prevent further transmission, and then voluntarily encourage people to be vaccinated according to their will, obviously to increase immunity across the populations. But the world of work has a huge responsibility, and the ILO is providing this kind of guidance to its constituents, workers, employers, and governments to be able to apply, state-of-the-art evidence on what works in measures to control and prevent further transmission through the workplace.
Thank you, Manal. Now, that's just about all we have time for on today's daily show. And then remember, tomorrow's ILC plenary discussions continue online and will be broadcast live from 1300 CEST, which is 1100 GMT. And we'll be back at the Daily Show at 16:30 CEST and 14:30 GMT with all the latest developments. And I should say that tomorrow's show will be a very, very special show because it's going to be dedicated to child labour. And as you may know, this year is the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour, and Saturday the 12th is World Day Against Child Labour. And then tomorrow, the ILO and UNICEF will be publishing new estimates on the number of children in child labour around the world. And these will be the first estimates for 4 years. And then in the ILC plenary, there'll be a high-level event to mark the World Day, and they'll be announcing the winners of the Music Against Child Labour competition. So, over to you, Luis.
Yes, thanks, Rosalind. You will have different hosts tomorrow. They will be joined by the ILO Deputy Director for Policy, the Director of the Governance Department, and the Chief of our Fundamentals branch, as well as a youth advocate on the child labor issue. For now, it is goodbye for me from the Americas. It has been a pleasure to present with you today. Rosalind, I hope you are doing good there in Geneva.
Thanks, Luis. It's really been a pleasure working with you today. And I hope that all of you watching have really enjoyed the show. And we look forward to seeing you the next time. And don't forget to post your questions using #ILC Daily Show. Goodbye. See you next time.